On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, I explore a passionate response I received from yesterday's story. TunnelBear is the simple VPN app that makes it easy to browse the web privately and enjoy a more open and secure internet experience. Try TunnelBear for free by checking out the link in the video description below. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. My name is Chris Coney, so let's get into today's news. So here's a bit of a context for this episode of the Cryptoverse. Yesterday, I put out this story about BitPay offering financial services to the RT News and Media Network because NatWest in the UK had decided to cease providing service to RT from any of the companies in the Royal Bank of Scotland group, and that within a month, I think it was, they'd have to withdraw all their funds from the UK NatWest bank accounts because all their credit card facilities and everything would be closed, and there was no reason given. Okay, so I put that story out saying, what the hell? And you know, this is the kind of thing that Bitcoin is good at, because with a Bitcoin economy and you have sovereignty over your own funds, you can't have these authoritarian financial institutions who have control over your wealth cutting you off from banking facilities, right? It didn't take long for someone to go to chrisconey.com, go to the contact page, and then fill out the contact form with this email. Now, I've copied it into a document because I want to keep the person's name and email private, because it's not about naming and shaming or anything like that. These are the kind of responses that actually are the most valuable to me. I always, if you've noticed in the comments for my YouTube videos, I always encourage people to, comment and express themselves freely, especially when they disagree with me. I was actually going to do a dedicated video on this, but the truth is that all of us are ignorant to a greater or lesser extent. Nobody has full information about everything in the universe, so we're all limited. But that doesn't mean that I have to wait until I have all the knowledge in the galaxy before I start a podcast. That's stupid, right? All the news broadcasters and all those folk, they don't have access to all the information in the universe. So everything they state in any news statement or podcast or anything is based on their limited perspective and their limited access to information and experience. So where we're left then is to express our insights from where we are now and then revise them as new information comes to light. And that is the specific reason why I like people have opposing opinions to share them, because I may very well learn something which may actually change my opinion, right? So of course, if I have a reasoned argument fired at me and it's logical, it's backed up and it's proven, I have to surrender my point of view to that reason and evidence that was presented to me that I didn't know about before. And that's what I'm constantly searching for, to get closer and closer to, quote, the truth, whatever the hell that is. And it provides stimulation for more insights. So this is the contents of the email. So let's go through this. This fellow says, small comment on your last video. Well, it's not very small, it's very long. It says, don't you really understand what is going on here? Don't you understand what RT is? Well, do I understand what RT is? RT is Russia Today. It's a news and media organization that's owned by the Russian state. So that's the answer to that question. And it says, do you understand what its main function is? RT's main function is to broadcast the news, various topical events, based on how they see the world. That's what we all do. I'm a one guy, but I'm also a media organization. What's my main function? Well, to comment on the news from my point of view. He says, I really like your show, but this last one completely missed the point. Well, what was the point? There were multiple points. Don't you understand what the RT is Russia's way to influence people and mislead them with government propaganda? Oh yeah, you mean like the Western media does, just from the opposite point of view. So if this guy is under any illusion that the Western media is somehow impartial and objective, then he's grossly misguided. One of the reasons why RT must exist, even if it's a propaganda machine, is because it creates an opposing point of view. And the reason that is absolutely critical is if the Western media is completely corrupt one way and is sporting government propaganda from one point of view, and RT is another government propaganda machine broadcasting information from another point of view, that's good because it creates balance. Granted, they're both extreme. Granted, they both may be corrupt. Granted, they might both be propaganda machines. But if you only have access to one source of information from one point of view, how can you make an informed decision? So with these two extremes, you can, as an individual, you can absorb both points of view and then decide for yourself. Whereas if you've only got one source of information, how can you weigh up the alternative? Ultimately, this is the benefit of decentralizing media. It's ultimately the benefit of people like me who just spontaneously decide to start a podcast and basically become a one-man media organization overnight, because we can have thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of people doing this. Each individual podcaster is like a news organization on their own, and they all have differing opinions, values, beliefs, virtues, and they're all going to be broadcasting propaganda. That's what I do. My propaganda is to attempt to brainwash you into my way of thinking, right? Because I believe it to be virtuous and moral and my value system to be correct, which is no different from what the Western media is doing, no different from what the RT network is doing if they are in fact a government propaganda machine. What you've got to realize is that if you abstract to a higher level, everyone is coming from a place where they think is positive. Or said another way, there's a principle that says there is a positive intent behind every action. I'll give you an extreme example of this. This is another philosophical tangent. So Hitler had a positive intent, right? Now that might shock you to begin with, but stay with me. Deep down, he sort of believed what he was doing would make the world a better place. Now, it was grossly misguided, it was grossly immoral, but in his little universe, in his little mind, he thought that what he was doing would make the world better. The problem was that better was a distorted definition, right? It was only better from his point of view. And then there's this exercise, I think this meme has been passed around the internet quite a lot. It lists all the virtues of Mahatma Gandhi and it lists all of the virtues of Hitler, like determination, willpower, charisma, blah, 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 blah. And they, blow for blow, have all the same character traits. And then the only thing that separates them as characters is morality. Hitler was immoral, Gandhi was moral. But the character traits that allowed them to become great men were exactly the same. So the reason why I'm happy to try and brainwash my audience, if you like, is because I'm coming from an ethical, moral, and philosophical point of view. So I believe my propaganda, if you want to call it that, is going to actually not just benefit the individual, but benefit everybody. And on top of that, to prevent you just arbitrarily taking on my point of view, I constantly encourage you to not just get your news from the Cryptoverse. For God's sake, subscribe to dozens of different Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news outlets and absorb them all and then make your own mind up. You must do it that way. If we're into Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains, the core of this is decentralization. So to come to a centralized point like me or RT or the Western media for your one source of information is a centralization. It's a centralized approach, which is daft. Because centralization brings the risk of corruption, the risk of all the rest of it. So my point there is decentralize your channels of information from the news, including that within the Bitcoin community. Because quite frankly, you have no guarantee whether I'm corrupt or not. I can tell you I'm not, but this is where you have to make your own mind up. I just give you my point of view, and then you can check in internally and see whether you agree with it. And you have to go inside and reconcile it with your own moral and ethical and philosophical knowing. Do not under any circumstances blindly accept anything that I say. So that was me dealing with that point there. Do I know that RT is Russia's way of influencing people with government propaganda? Well, I'll simplify that to say RT is giving the world Russia's point of view on world events. And that's fine, because no one's forcing you to watch RT, right? You have to voluntarily subscribe to their YouTube channel or flick to their channel on the television, right? It's not the only channel in town, because that truly would be propaganda, right? If that was the only source of information. But we have the internet. You can watch Western media online. You can watch Russian media online. You can watch Arab media online, Al Jazeera, all that stuff. Watch it all. So anyway, this guy goes on to say, I'm very happy that the West is finally doing something about it. You are talking about freedom of speech in a country where people from the opposition are killed on the street, where journalists are killed if they present a different line than the government. Okay, you mean like recently where a American journalist was arrested for doing a documentary on some environmental disaster? No, actually, I think it was oil protests. She was making a documentary style film and she got arrested for it. This is a Westerner in a Western country. So if this guy's under any illusion that that stuff doesn't go on in the USA, again, grossly misguided. A country that can kill people even outside its borders if they become dangerous to the regime. Seriously now? Seriously now? Saddam Hussein? Gaddafi? Isn't that two individuals outside of American borders that became dangerous to them, or supposedly dangerous, and then got killed? I think so. My understanding of why they took Gaddafi out is because that was another regime change, and Gaddafi was trying to create an independent economy in Libya, and he wanted to put his country on a gold standard, which would have took control of his oil and his currency away from the US dollar. If he'd had a gold standard currency, that would have been loosening America's grip and the dollar's grip on Libya, and America didn't like that. So it was regime change time. I also seem to remember something in the WikiLeaks about an actual list of countries that America wants regime change in, and it goes something like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. I think Iran's on the list somewhere. And then this was published a while ago, and since then, systematically, America has been going around the world changing government regimes. So Russia might have a historical brand as being a country with corruption, but if the West, and especially America, is somehow falsely perceived to be a shining, bright white example of democracy, grossly misguided. So next bit here, it says, you're talking about people influencing on a government in a country where every election is fraud, and people are not able to change the government, so they do not go to elections. You only have to do a bit of digging online to find a lot of info and a lot of signs that the American election is being rigged and there's fraud going on as well. So again, the notion that Russia's corrupt and America is not, again, it's false. And the fellow then supplies me with a whole bunch of YouTube videos with, sources of information on this, but for every one of these, there's going to be 10 that suggest corruption in Western countries. And then he ends by saying, do you really believe they, RT, deserve the right to poison our minds as Grima in Tolkien's book? Do they deserve the right to poison our minds? Well, do they deserve the right to broadcast their point of view? Yes. Do they have the right to poison our minds? Well, that's not a right, and neither can they poison our minds. Because A, we have to expose ourselves to that information, so that's our free will. And 2, even if we do expose ourselves to it, we don't have to take it in. So it's not a right and it's not a default. If I watch RT, I don't suddenly become a Russian propaganda machine. So because this is what RT is doing, it will pick up any topic that will put the USA and other Western countries in a bad light. If you watch the Western media in the USA, they do exactly the same to Russia. They pick up any story. You've heard Hillary Clinton saying, every hack is the Russians, every hack is the Russians. The Russians have hacked into the Democratic National Committee, etc., without any proof, right? That's propaganda. And I'm not siding with either of them, right? This is why I'm an advocate of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains, because it will stamp out corruption like no other tool we've ever seen. So he says, and finally, I'm a big advocate of freedom. Being born and raised on the other side of the Iron Curtain, I really know what it means to live, as I say, live or leave in a totalitarian state. But you can only talk about freedom if you are free. Otherwise, it makes no sense. To measure Russia with your standards is a mistake. I'm sorry for spelling this out, but one is coming from the heart. Well, none of us are really free. We're all born into laws that we did not agree to, especially in the United Kingdom, where every law is signed by the Queen, right? And you come into the world in the United Kingdom, and all of a sudden you're under all of these authoritarian rules from government and all of the laws. When can you just show me a piece of paper that I signed at any point in my life, or I gave permission to be bound by those laws? You won't find one. So freedom is not a switch. It's not like free or not free. Freedom is a scale, right? So I guess total slavery would be on one end and absolute freedom would be on the other end. And I don't think either of those it would be a workable system, because both are completely out of balance. I do not believe the human race has yet got to a certain level of self-mastery where they could just be completely self-organizing, right? Because there's still a lot of egos out there, there's still a lot of selfishness, and so that really wouldn't work. However, I do believe where we are now is too far to the left in terms of not left-wing politics or right-wing politics. I mean, if slavery was on the left of the scale and absolute freedom was on the right of the scale, I would say that we are down the slavery end still. Now, this episode was a one-off because this was a long response to one of my videos. I don't want to make this into a political channel. So I made this channel about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains because I see getting wider adoption for that is going to have the knock-on effect of creating greater freedom for people, removing corruption from the world, and creating a more equitable society. I could have done that by starting a channel commenting on the news and politics. However, I don't think that goes deep enough to solve the problem. Unless we get control back of the monetary system, corruption is going to continue. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Give me a comment below and get subscribed. Or even consider supporting me directly by going to the Cryptoversity podcast page and sending me a Bitcoin tip to the address on that page. If you'd like to support me without actually spending any money, click on the Steam It logo, vote for this episode on the Steam network, and that will get me some cryptocurrency without you having to spend any money. If you prefer something physical in exchange for your donation, then head over to the Cryptoversity store and buy yourself a t-shirt with the Cryptoversity branding on it. That kind of thing helps me out a lot. Alternatively, if you would like a more structured information on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains, head over to the courses section and buy yourself an online course. That's all for today. So until tomorrow and the next episode of the Cryptoverse, it's me, Chris Cody, saying bye for now.